Hi guys, Tracy here with a scrapbooking process video. This time I'm using a cut file from Justnick Studio, and I'm going to try going one way with this cut file, and then I'm going to change my mind and try something new that I'm not entirely sure if it's going to work out or not. You're going to come along with me for the process, and you'll see the whole thing from my original idea through to the new idea and see how it all turns out. So I'm starting with this cut file, and I used a new mat, which was not the greatest idea, because I normally, when I use a new mat, I kind of I stick it to my clothes a couple times and pull it off just to get it a little bit less sticky. And I didn't do that with this one. So I'm having to really carefully pry this cut file off of my mat. And so that gives you guys a chance to really see it. Even though it's 4 times as fast, it's still taking a little while. But that's okay. And I did rip it there, but that's okay. I'm going to end up cutting it all over again anyways. But even before I cut it all over again, I was able to fix that little problem with the ripped daisy. And so there's the cut file. I made it to be a little bit shorter, and I'm just using my Cricut tools there. I didn't bother buying new tools. When I bought my Cameo, I actually sold my Cricut first so that I could have the money to buy my Cameo. And so I have all Cricut tools, and this scraper is excellent for getting the stray pieces off your mat. So that you can clean off your mat super, super fast without having to pick every one of those individual pieces off. Silhouette makes similar tools though, so you could pick them up from wherever. You can get them for the best price. It doesn't matter if it's the colors of the Cricut or not. So here's the cut file. You'll see that I cut it a little bit smaller than 12 by 12, and I actually just blew it up a little tiny bit from the size that it came when you buy it. So I cut these, I printed up these photos of my cat sleeping, and I printed them in black and white because I was planning to use some of the Fancy Free collection for this layout, and it's bright and colorful, and I thought that if I had black and white photos, it would look the best. And also, my cats tend to get kind of lost amongst their bed. They are the same color as the bed, and there would have been a lot of brown and beige on this layout if I didn't make it black and white. So I think the photo just looks a lot better like this. So these are some thickers that are from the Fancy Free collection, and I'm using the Cake by the Ocean kit from the Scraptastic Kit Club for this, but I'm basically mostly just using the Fancy Free stuff. I grabbed the cloud because I plan to use the wavy parts of the cloud as a homemade question mark. And I'm thinking, at first I thought I'd call this Dream because the cats are sleeping. And then I thought I'm going to call it Do Cats Dream. And so I need a question mark for that. So here's that Cake by the Ocean kit. And my initial thought was that there is this pattern paper in the Fancy Free collection that is all of these little squares of pattern paper. And when I saw that, I thought that it would make an excellent thing to use for piecing together a background from a cut file. So I'm guest designing for the Justnick Studio this month, and so I got to choose whatever I wanted from the shop, which was very exciting. You guys know I love her cut files and I use them often. And so when I saw this daisy background, it's called a Doodle Flower Background. And when I saw it, I just knew I had to use it because it's totally up my alley. It's very much my style. So, and I thought that it would work with these little squares of pattern paper, and that would allow me to make each flower be a different design. And if you'll notice that some of the flowers are actually bigger than the squares, but there are doubles of some of the squares. So I might be able to piece together most of these daisies from the little squares. So I start with doing that, and I'm just using my little scissors to fussy cut around it. And then I'm just going to figure out where it goes, and I left the little pieces, the little places where it attaches to other flowers to remind me, just kind of to cue me as to where it goes. And so I'm just going to apply my glue, and I'm using Tombow Aqua Glue, which is great for gluing paper to paper. And so I'm just I glued it in place, and then I'm just going to do a little tiny bit of trimming. I cut it a little bit too big. I tried to cut it just a little bit under the line where I traced around it, but I should have cut it a lot inside of the line instead of just a little tiny bit. So there's lots of little pieces sticking out, and I'm being a bit of a perfectionist here. I don't want any pieces sticking out. It's important to me, so I'm taking the time to fix it all up. And that's it was just bad judgment for the first one. The other ones that I did after that, I didn't have to trim down as much because I realized that I just have to be careful to cut well inside the traced lines. So I thought, I love this paper here, and I thought if I'm going to use such a big pattern, I better use it on the very largest of the flowers. So that's what I'm doing here. I picked out the largest of the flowers, and I'm tracing around it. And now this time when I cut, I'm cutting well inside of that traced line so that none of my cuts are going to go over and need extra trimming. It does take a few minutes sometimes to figure out how it fits in the flower because the flowers are not perfectly symmetrical, of course. That's what I love about them, is that they're all doodly. And so this is a pretty good way to do this, actually, to glue around the file and then flip it over and stick it down like I just did. And if I continued, that would have been the strategy I would have used, but I'm going to stop pretty soon. I'm going to change my mind about this. So now this is that exact same pattern, but a small version of it. And I think I'm going to like this better because you're going to get to see more of the pattern because it's a smaller version of it. So I'm just, like you see here, not all of it would fit. So I'm just cutting half of it here and I'll glue that in place. I had to do a little bit of snipping there. I'll glue that one in place. So I'm kind of doing a couple of different approaches. One way is to glue it and then stick it down, and another way is to glue it and then flip it over and pick it up like I did the last time. And so I'm tracing the second half of this, and you can see that this could take me quite a long time, especially if I'm piecing together two pieces of pattern paper for each of these daisies. It certainly is faster than if I were to choose a different type of pattern for every single petal. So using one pattern for each flower is definitely faster than making each of the petals be completely different patterns. But this is going to take me a while. And it's taking a while, and I'm not entirely liking it, to be honest. So I thought maybe I should be using more tight patterns that you can actually see better. What I don't like is that I'm sort of losing the effect of the flower because so many of the patterns that I'm using have white and the cut is in white. And so I feel like I'm not really getting to see that beautiful die cut piece as much. And so I thought if I used a tighter pattern, that would work. So that daisy with the blue pattern definitely looks better than the other daisies. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll just selectively pick better patterns that you'll be able to see better. And then I remembered this piece of paper, and I really like how this looks. And I thought maybe I should have just used this piece of paper for all of the flowers. So in order to see if that's something I'm going to like, I'm just going to cut this one. And the reason I cut it from the very center like that, I know it's kind of, you might be cringing as I cut into that beautiful piece of paper, but I have another piece of it. And that was the most interesting part. So I wanted to see what it would look like. And I would only know if I did it. So here I am giving it a try. So I really like that. I like it a lot, actually. And I'm thinking I need to just do all of these. And so I'm kind of just experimenting with how it's going to look in the different flowers. And I'm thinking I really, really like this a lot. And I'm wishing that I had just maybe recut the whole. So now I'm thinking, oh, can I pull all these off and do the whole thing in that? And I can't. I'm trying, but the glue has already dried, and that glue it's really great for gluing paper to paper, and you can't change your mind. So I'm pulling it off, and I'm not going to like how that looks. It just looks too messy. And so I'm thinking, oh, that's okay. I'll just cut a new version of it. So that's what I went to do. I went and I got another piece of white cardstock and I ran it through my silhouette and recut the whole file. And now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what came next. All right, so you might be able to hear my Cameo over there cutting out another version of this shape here. So what happened was I got halfway through, not even halfway through, but I started to do it one way, and then I realized that I would really love for this to be the background on this cut. So I decided to go ahead and cut another version of this cut file. So I'm just going to go run and get it. So here's my cut file recut so that I can try again. This time I'm going to try making it so that the flower centers are all going to be bits and parts of this paper right here. The way that I'm going to do that is I went in and to my cut file and I right-clicked it and selected Release the Compound Path. What that does is it takes this and changes it from one whole cut file to a whole bunch of itty-bitty cut files. Then I went in and I selected every single one of the petals, not these spaces in between, not these ones, but just the petals, and I deleted each one of the petals, only the petals. So I want this piece to stay a cut, like I want it to cut this, but I don't want it to cut all of these little petals. So what I'm going to have is the same outside shape, and I'll have all the cuts for all of the in-between flower, all these little in-between areas, but my flowers, instead of some of them being outlines of flowers and some of them being solid, they're all going to be solid flowers, and that piece will be cut from this paper. And then in theory what I should be able to do is just put this one perfectly on top of that one, and this pattern paper will show through, but only in the places where this version has the outlines and the bottom version is solid. I'm not entirely sure that I described that properly, but I'm going to go do it and then I'll show you so that it will hopefully make a little bit more sense. I just have to decide how I want to orient my paper. I think I want it just like this. Okay, so I thought I would just tell you how I decided how to position it on the mat. So what I did was this is the giveaway petal that tells me the orientation of this cut file. So I can tell from looking at my computer where the one is that I have scooched up too far so that it goes outside of the cutting area. So what I did was I figured out where I wanted my cut file to go on my background paper, and then it ended up being, it ended up that I wanted it right here. And so what I did was I actually took this paper, it's now connected to my mat, but I took this paper when it wasn't on my mat over to my trimmer, and I just trimmed it so that it ended right there. And then I took this, which is sort of the adhesive on the back of the cut file just from the mat, the residue keeps it in place. I took it to my trimmer, trimmed off the extra, and then I put it onto this mat like it is now. So now I know that it's going to cut approximately here, and these pieces that are showing through the flowers right now are the pieces that will cut through the flowers when this thing is cut. That's the theory anyways. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so it's cut. So here it comes, the moment of truth. So I just sped this up because of my super sticky cutting mat. It took me quite a long time to get this released from the mat, and so you'll see that it has cut all of the flowers solidly, and then the only parts that are remaining behind on the mat are those little spaces in between the flowers, which is exactly what I wanted to have happen. So far I'm pretty happy about this whole process. So we can line up the piece that was cut off the page with the piece that was cut off the page, and let's see how this goes. I think it's going to work. Oh my gosh. It works! And I don't have to cut out every single individual piece. I can just, oh, I can't even tell you how happy I am that this works. It works amazingly well, surprisingly well. I know it's supposed to work in theory. It doesn't surprise me that, like, I knew that it should work, but I didn't know that it would work. I guess that's what is impressing me, is that it actually does work. So now, all that I have to do, and the residue on the back of the white version of this die cut is actually making my job even easier. All that I have to do is pull up the pieces and glue it down. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to actually kind of start in the middle-ish and just glue down all of the pieces, and I'm just using a very, very thin bead of glue, and again I'm using that same aqua glue from Tombow, which is really great, as I mentioned, for paper on paper applications, and it has a really fine point, and so I can just run a very small bead of glue on all of the outlines of the flowers that have the outlines, and then on the solid flowers I'm just putting some glue all over the whole petal. And then, I'm just kind of working my way around the die cut, pulling it up and sticking down the center part, and then pulling up what's left on the edges and sticking them down as well. And I'll just keep working my way around the die cut like this until the whole thing is glued down. And as I do it, you'll see every once in a while I'm kind of pushing the top layer, and if there's little edges showing, I'm just kind of pushing it, and the liquid glue is really great for that because it is more flexible. So I just slowed it down a little bit so that you could see what this die cut looks like now that it is completely finished. I love how it looks with that pattern in the middle. That pattern was absolutely perfect for this flower. It's exactly what I had in mind. I'm so glad that I didn't have to piece together tons of little patterns. I really like how this looks. And I like that the pattern sort of continues from one flower to another. So I'm just comparing here what it looked like before, and that other die cut that I started off with, it actually took me about 20 minutes to get to that point, and then to get this one connected took about less than 5 minutes. So it's definitely a much, much faster way to do it. If you don't want to mess around with the software and deleting pieces from a cut file, all that you would have to do is the same approach that I was taking at the beginning. Just trace the flower patterns on the background paper and then cut it out individually, and that would work as well. It would just take a little bit longer, that's all. So here's my title, and I'm going to go ahead and try to create a question mark from some of the puffiness of the cloud. And so there's a pretty rough question mark. I'll fix it up before the end, but that's pretty much all the parts that I need to make a question mark. I thought about kind of making the edges a little bit more smooth by piecing in an extra one there, but I'm not going to do that. I am going to smooth out one of the other edges, but I'll wait till a little bit longer. I'll wait till almost the end. So now I'm just cutting a little dot for the exclamation point, and I've got some leftover pieces, which is good. So there's my dream question mark. And And I'm going to use these Heidi Swap letter stickers, which are some of my very favorite puffy letter stickers. They have this classic typewriter looking font to them with the serifs. Very clean, very nice font. I just really love it. So I'm going to spell out do cats with this font, and I like it because it's glitter and it's foam like the dream, but it's black. So it provides some nice contrast for this layout. There's a lot of color on the layout already, so I definitely didn't want another color for the font for do and cats. Now I'm just having a look through these fancy free die cut pieces, and I'm actually looking for, oh, there's that little piece that didn't get cut properly because I had it positioned wrong on the work surface. I'm actually looking for some of these fancy free die cut pieces that do not have words on them, because I feel like my title is all the words that I really want on this layout. I don't want anything else. And so almost all of those fancy free die cuts have phrases on them. And so none of them really worked. I pulled out a tag there. You see it kind of sticking out from behind the second photo there on the right hand side. And then I also took out a hashtag, acrylic hashtag from the kit, and a flare badge from the kit. And now this is my stash, and I picked this gray flower. It's from Prima, and it came in the Rivers and Roads kit, I believe, from the Scraptastic Club. And here I go. I thought that, gee, this glue is so great for gluing paper to paper. I'll just glue this die cut down with it too. I'm going to live to regret this, but I thought it was a good idea at the time. And so I'm just gluing my white die cut down onto my white background, and I love this tone on tone look that you get with the white flowers, the solid white flowers that lift up off of the cardstock background. I really love the shadows that it casts, and it actually curls up a little bit more because of all that liquid glue that I used on it. It just kind of curls it up a little bit. It's still curled even after several hours. It will flatten down when I put it in my scrapbook, but what I'll do is I'll put some foam dots to hold some of that space, just so that I get some lift. So I did take a picture so that I could remember how I had the photos positioned. I had them positioned very casually, as if they just fell that way, and I wanted to make sure that they still look casual. So there we go. I just wanted them slightly overlapped and just a little bit askew so that they look very casual there. And then I'm going to put that flower there, that gray Prima flower, and it's made out of paper. It's just a really cool big flower. And the reason I chose that one, I'm just going to stick down the word dream here, and I want the D to go right on the line between the two photos, and then for the rest of it to kind of overlap with that photo on the right. And now I'm going to place my question mark. I'm going to fiddle with it a little tiny bit, but I wanted to, with all of the color in the die cut of this layout, I really wanted just the die cut and the title to be, like the word dream in the title, to be the two main sources of color. And there we go. I'm just going to scooch it down a little bit and make it a little bit shorter. And I'll fix it up even more before the end. So there's so much color where the die cuts are, or the die cut flowers. And then we've got that word dream in that beautiful turquoise blue. And so I wanted everything else with this layout to be pretty neutral. So that's why I chose gray for the flower. It picks up on the black and white in the photo and ties in a little bit. And there's also some gray in the pattern paper, that the tiny little, there's like a gray streak that runs across the right-hand side of where the die cut pieces are. And so now I'm just layering. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see what I did. I took apart one of these banners from a Maggie Holmes collection, and I took it apart, and I'm just going to use the ribbon part of it, but I'm going to layer it underneath of that colorful clear tag that I had, that transparency tag. And then I'm going to put some ATG on it and just slip it behind the photo so that it's just sticking out from the photo right there. I'm going to reposition that question mark probably a million more times. And now this part of the die cut piece needs to sit down a little bit more so that I can stick the Prima flower to it and the whole thing will sit down. So I was going to use a foam dot for the back of this flower, but then at the last minute I decided to use some Tombow Mono multi-adhesive, which is great for putting anything with a lot of dimension onto your layouts. And I'm overlapping that flower so that most of it is on the cat bed. I know it looks like a giant cat tummy there, but it's actually part of the bed. The bed is fur. It's not real fur, but it's like, you know, cozy, soft fur like stuff. So what am I doing now? Next, I'm going to make a big mistake with my journaling. So here's what I will suggest. Don't ever write with lines behind you that are going a different direction. So see how the whole thing is scooched over sideways? And then I turn it around, and it's natural to for your writing to go crooked when you've got lines going in all different directions. So the lines of my craft mat really threw me off with my journaling and made my journaling really obviously off kilter. And if it were only a little bit off kilter, I would have just left it, but it was really off kilter. So I'm overcompensating. I really don't need to be this careful to get my line straight, but I just definitely do not want to repeat what just happened. So I'm going to go ahead and use my ruler and my grid mat to draw my lines. I didn't trust myself after I made that big of a mistake. I've already made a couple of mistakes on this layout, or not mistakes, but I've changed my mind so many times, and then to add on top of that a big mistake like this, I just definitely don't want to make another mistake. So this time I'm using ATG to glue all of this whole clump down, and ATG is much more forgiving. You can pull things up if you really want to, and it doesn't harm your surface all that much. So my journaling there just says, I think it's safe to say they do. And then there's the little flare badge, and it has a little asterisk, and it says see photo. And I really like that because it's sort of like see the photo for proof that they really do dream, because it's got these two snoozing cats. And they twitch, and they sometimes look like they're actually dreaming while they're sleeping. So now I added those two little butterfly pins to the flower just because I felt like I needed a little something more interesting up there. And then I thought I'd carry the butterfly motif back down to this area right here, but I'm actually going to change my mind about that. I went to the trouble of cutting the pin off. I just used my wire cutters, and then I decided, no, I need something more substantial than just a little white butterfly on a white background here. So I was going to use those gold hearts, and then I realized, wait, I'm not introducing color. I can't use gold butterflies because they read as yellow. So then I found these Studio Calico chipboard stars, and they're painted different shades, including 2 shades of gray. But I only have one of the small gray ones, and so I kind of have to play around with it to try to get it the way that I want them to I want them in 2 different places, and I want different sizes and different shades. And because I only have one small, it was causing trouble. But then, look, I found another package of them. Hooray for me for buying things in 2s. I always thought that I did that for no reason, but other than, to hoard. But it turns out it's actually good. So yes, I found another package, and then I had plenty to choose from, and I was able to spread those stars around the layout in the way that I really wanted to. And so I'm actually using my wire cutters to cut the edges off of the stars that are hanging off the edge. And where I hung one off the edge, I wanted to hang another one off the edge. Oops, but not 3. That would be too much. Just to make it look a little bit more natural. And now I'm feeling like everything is a little bit too far over to the left. Like the left is sort of crowded, and then the right is too spaced. It's too spaced out. And so I'm just going to, you know what? I use the ATG for a reason. It's good that I can now just scooching it over a tiny little bit makes that much of a difference. And it just feels a little bit less crammed over there on the left-hand side. And I really love how this looks. This is one of my favorite layouts in a long, long time. I'm going to mask off lots of this layout so that I can really have control over where the sprinkles land when I spray my mist here. I'm just going to splatter my mist in 3 different places where the stars are. And I'm covering everything because I don't want the mist splatters to land on anything other than the background paper. So there we go. And the mist that I was using there was Heidi Swapp Color Shine in black. And I'm going to just do one more little change here. I'm pulling up this flare badge that says See Photo, and it has an asterisk on it. So I want to put an asterisk on my journaling so that they look like they they coordinate or they kind of go together. And so I know that this is really fast, but I'm going to move that flower over because somehow it scooched over in the designing process so that it was covering too much of the D. And now it's giving that D a little bit more room to breathe. It's more where I intended it to go. And now I will show you this layout up close and personal. I love how the mist landed on this one. I don't always love the way that mist lands, and you give up quite a degree of control when you're sprinkling mist. And so it's always nice when it lands in a nice way instead of in a crazy, horrible way. Well, it never really lands in a horrible way, but sometimes it lands in places I don't necessarily want it to be. So it's nice when it behaves. So there is that one for you. I had so much fun playing with Nicole's cut files this month. I wanted to say a great big giant thank you to Nicole for asking me to guest design for her blog this month. I really loved having a look around at all the cut files in her shop. It was really hard to just choose a few, but I love the ones that I picked, and I had a lot of fun using them, and I'm sure I'll use them again. So make sure you hop on over to her blog and check out what she has going on over there, and also her shop, which is linked in the information section for this video. Thanks so much for watching, and have a really great scrappy week.